There is a watch that costs less than a movie ticket, weighs less than a pencil, and keeps time more accurately than any mechanical Rolex, Omega, or Patek. Felipe ever submitted for Swiss chronometer certification before 1969. It has been worn by school children, construction crews, and the engineers who helped build the Swiss industry that, by 1974, had already lost. It outperforms a $15,000 Omega Speedmaster. On the single test, the Swiss watch industry literally founded entire observatories to measure. And you can buy it right now for about $15. This is the Casio MQ-24. And the reason Omega themselves built a watch in 1974 that proved a $15 Casio was right all along. A watch Omega then quietly erased from its own heritage is the part of this story almost no one outside vintage watch archives knows. My name is Lucas, and let's take a look at the history of the cheapest watch that ever embarrassed a luxury brand. But to understand how a $15 plastic quartz ever won a 400-year accuracy war, you first need to understand what happened when the Swiss establishment saw quartz coming in 1969. For 400 years, telling time accurately had been an artisanal craft. Swiss watchmakers measured their reputation in seconds per day, and every prestigious manufacturer in Geneva and Neuchâtel sent its best mechanical movements to observatory chronometer competitions, weeks of relentless testing for the right to stamp a watch, observatory certified. Of the millions Switzerland produced each year in the mid-1960s, only about 250,000 received any chronometer status at all. This was the accuracy game, and the Swiss owned it. Then, on December 25, 1969, Seiko released the Astron, the world's first commercial quartz wristwatch, 100 times more accurate than any mechanical watch in existence. An engineer named Tsuneya Nakamura and his team at Suwa Seikosha had built it. It cost 450,000 yen, roughly $1,250, more than a new car at the time. But the Swiss establishment, which had been watching Seiko quietly dominate their own observatory quartz categories since 1964, understood exactly what had just happened. The 1968 Neuchâtel chronometer competition was never held. When I first read that the most prestigious accuracy contest on Earth simply stopped because Japanese quartzes kept winning it, I had to read the citation 3 times. This is where Casio enters. Casio was not a watch company. Founded in 1946 by the Casio brothers, they made calculators and focused on miniaturization and integrated circuits. When they launched their first watch in November 1974, the Casiotron, they did everything wrong. It was expensive. It was complicated. It was positioned as luxury. It flopped. But it taught them the one lesson that would define everything after it. Simple and accurate would always beat complicated, expensive, and mechanical. November 1974 matters for a second reason. Because that same month, Omega was shipping the watch they would spend the next 50 years pretending they never made. But before we get to what Omega did, you have to see what Casio built on the other side of that decade. By 1987, Casio had absorbed every lesson the Casiotron taught them, and they released the MQ-24, Module 705, 3 hands, a date window, a resin case, 19 grams on the wrist. The specs read like a list of quiet insults to the Swiss luxury industry. Accuracy, plus or minus 20 seconds per month, roughly 7 times more accurate than any Omega Master Chronometer Speedmaster that Casio has ever shared a display case with. Battery life, 3 years on a single SR626SW cell, which means once you set an MQ-24, you do not touch it again for 36 months, and it keeps better time than the $15,000 mechanical Seamaster the entire time. Weight, 19 grams, less than 3 United States quarters stacked. You forget it is on your wrist. Water resistance, splash rated, not dive rated, which is honest in a way most of the watch industry has never been. This is a timekeeper, not a tool watch, not a status object, a timekeeper. Think of the MQ-24 the way you would think of early Uniqlo, or Muji, or IKEA, a product whose entire identity was the refusal to have one. By the early 1990s, the MQ-24 was in gas stations, drugstores, hotel gift shops, and airport kiosks on 4 continents. It was the default starter watch, the default grab and go, the default gift for a grandkid's 10th birthday. My father wore one to work every day for 15 years. He treated it like a pen. It never broke, and it kept more accurate time than the mechanical Hamilton my grandfather left him, a watch that cost about 60 times more. Casio has continuously manufactured the same MQ-24 from 1987 to today without a meaningful spec change, which makes it, arguably, the most widely distributed analog quartz design in modern horology. But while the MQ-24 was quietly becoming the default watch of the developing world, the Swiss industry had a secret it was actively burying, and Omega was at the center of it. Because the watch Omega built in 1974 and then refused to build again is the reason every luxury watchmaker alive today privately knows the accuracy argument is over, even when they sell you a $15,000 mechanical watch and pretend it is not. On February 25, 1974, the Besançon Observatory in France, after 63 days of continuous testing, certified the Omega Caliber 1511, the Megaquartz Marine Chronometer, as the world's first and only wristwatch ever granted official marine chronometer status. Before or since, the movement carries a quartz resonator vibrating at 2.4 megahertz, grown from a lens-cut crystal developed in the United Kingdom. Measured accuracy, 12 seconds of variation per year, less than 0.002 seconds per day. Omega spent 30 million Swiss francs chasing that single number. They built 1,000 of them and sold them for £761 apiece, 6 times the price of a Speedmaster moonwatch on the same shelf. Jacques Cousteau wore one. Eric Tabarly wore one sailing transatlantic. By 1978, Omega stopped making it. The project was never revived. The marine chronometer does not appear in contemporary Omega heritage marketing. An Omega customer walking into a boutique today could spend $15,000 on a mechanical Speedmaster, and Omega's own archive proves that same money in 1974 could have bought a watch more than 100 times more accurate than anything on the modern shelf. And here's the piece that made me laugh the first time I saw it. The Casio MQ-24 runs on the same physical principle, quartz crystal oscillation, just at 32,768 Hz instead of 2.4 million Hz. It is architecturally a direct descendant of exactly what Omega proved and then abandoned. This is why Omega buried the story. Admitting that a 1974 quartz had obliterated every mechanical Omega that followed it would collapse the entire pricing model the Swiss industry rebuilt on myth. Think of it like Blockbuster having owned Netflix in 2004 and shelving it to protect the VHS business. So what does a $15 Casio actually embarrass? Not the $15,000 Omega in the boutique window. It embarrasses the version of Omega that knew the truth in 1974 and chose not to say it out loud. Modern luxury mechanical watches are not priced for accuracy anymore. They are priced for mythology, heritage, finishing, scarcity, the story around the watch. That is a legitimate business. It just is not what watches were originally for. We are watching the same pattern play out right now with AI, cheap tools that outperform expensive ones, and an industry scrambling to rebuild a moat around craftsmanship, while the utility argument quietly ends in the background. A $15 plastic Casio does not embarrass a $15,000 Omega. It reminds the entire watch industry what a watch was actually supposed to do in the first place. Now, I would love to hear from you. What is the cheapest watch you have ever owned that quietly outperformed something 5 times its price? Let me know in the comments. I am Lucas, and I will see you in the next one.